know like the power of LinkedIn and power of like just speaking to people and just like talking about what's going on, because there are people out there willing to help whether you believe it or not.
I'm Omar El Malak and I'm a fourth year computer science student at the University of Toronto, minoring in business and math. Today I'm joined by Jillanne Youssef, who's a mechanical design engineering intern at Tesla, as well as a mechanical engineering student at the University of Waterloo in her fourth year. Since her first year, Jillanne has completed internships across a range of companies and industries. She's worked at Evercloak, Valbruna, and Geotab, and is now back at Tesla for the second time after earning a return offer. In this episode, Jillanne and I dive into how to navigate internships in engineering. She shares how she set her sights on her dream role early on and the concrete steps she took to actually land it. We also talk about how to build a portfolio that convinces recruiters to hire you, what managers are looking for when deciding whether or not to give an intern a return offer, how to stand out as an engineer in an era where everyone is using AI to get an edge, and how to learn the skills that truly matter on the job, most of which aren't actually taught in the classroom. So, without further ado, I'm excited to share my discussion with Jillanne Youssef. All right, second episode.
Hell
Jillanne,
yeah.
good to have you here. How are you feeling?
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm good. It's nice seeing you again after a long time
Long time, huh?
since our
Yeah,
last
for
internship.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I mean, on that topic, we actually kind of met in a funny way. Both of us were placed at our internship a month late. So we were two out of three interns in the orientation. Shout out to Tanvir if he's listening. And we started just chatting over the orientation tasks, and that kind of turned into our team that we built together for a hackathon. But I won't spoil too much about that yet. But the reason I brought you on is because your positivity and willingness to put yourself out there and everything you do has built you a really well respected and deserved reputation in the engineering space.
Thank
And I
you.
think, yeah, of course. And I think you're, especially for students who are moving to university from foreign countries and stuff, your journey is something that a lot of people can relate to and kind of model their path after as well. So there's so much they can learn from you, which is why I'm super excited to have you on here. So if you want to do a quick intro for yourself, then we can kind of just jump into some icebreakers, and the viewers can get to know you a bit better beyond the resume.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. So, a little bit about myself. I grew up in Saudi Arabia. I went to high school there and I lived there for 16 years of my life. And then I moved to Canada all alone for university. I go to the University of Waterloo and I'm currently, like, I just finished the first half of my third year. And so there's like 2 years left of the degree. In regarding internships, I've completed four and I'm on my fifth internship right now. I'm currently working at Tesla as a mechanical design engineer on the interiors team. So I'm basically working on like all the interior lighting, switches, and sensors. And I previously was at Tesla on a different team, and it's basically the team that designs all of the machines that make cells, but like in the R&D phase. So that's what I did. And then before that, I was with Amar here at Geotab. That was like honestly the craziest like story of like how I got that job, and we'll probably get into that later. And
We
before that,
will.
I was working at yeah. Before I was working at a steel foundry in the middle of nowhere called Welland. Like, okay, the city is it's horrible, but it's worth it because then it brings you here from Welland to California, bro. It's so crazy.
It is crazy. It is pretty crazy.
It's
But
so
if
fun.
anyone from Welland is listening to this, I apologize for for,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
that
Shout
intro.
out Welland.
But shout out Welland, shout out Welland. So we'll just go into some icebreakers real quick.
Okay.
So what's one app you can't live without outside of work?
Outside of work, I'd probably say Reddit because that's where I get like all my ideas, and also it's just like entertaining. It's a nice pastime. So yeah.
Fair enough. I'm
Second
not
to
really
Reddit
on
is
the
probably Reels though.
Reels a second. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I
I
can't
mean,
lie.
I'm not
Can't
really,
lie.
yeah, I'm not really on the Reddit wave, and I'm unfortunately on the Reels wave. So I do want to kind of tone that down a little bit
Yeah,
to save some time, but we'll see how that goes.
yeah. To save your
If
brain.
Yeah, save my brain exactly. If you could live anywhere in the world for a year, where would it be?
For a year, I'd probably want to live somewhere like Iceland or low-key just somewhere random that like I'll never have another opportunity to go there again. So, and I think Iceland is beautiful, so probably that.
Live in
Or
Iceland
Saudi
or
Arabia.
visit? Okay.
I'd live there for a year, like why not? Because like when else am I gonna do that? Like I'll
Yeah,
never be
that is
given the
true.
opportunity. Yeah.
Like the Blue Lagoon and things like that, and just
Yeah.
get off the face of the earth in the tech world
Yeah.
and engineering, I guess at this
Yeah,
point.
off the
But
grid, delete
yeah,
LinkedIn.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a big one. We'll get into
That's
LinkedIn
wild.
later, but
Oh, LinkedIn man.
right. If you could master any skill instantly, work related or not, what would it be?
That's a really good question. If I could master any skill, uh, hmm. Okay, a work-related skill I'd want to master. It's just like doing shit like as fast as possible, as nice as possible, without like having to go through like multiple iterations. Like some people are just like insanely cracked like that. So being able to do that would definitely be like crazy. Another skill like with work I would really like is like instant resume like writing. Like I take so long writing my resume, but if I could just like do it in one shot, like that would be blessed. Uh, and like non-work related, probably just like the ability to time travel and like edit the past and future and stuff. I think that's like kind of insane.
Okay, those are a lot of points. I wasn't expecting like detailed answers like that.
Well, actually,
Um,
okay,
yeah,
okay.
I thought it was like I thought it was just gonna be like, oh, like I want to learn Python better or something, like something boring like that. No, that's sick. Okay. What's a small habit or routine that you do every day that makes a big difference in your life?
Small habit that makes a big difference in my life. Okay, one I would say I've been doing more recently is like working out when I'm like dead or tired because I feel like it wakes me up so fast right away and like if I'm at work and I'm like I just can't keep my head off the desk, I'll literally like go outside, walk across the whole parking lot, which is like pretty big, and come back and I feel so much better. That's something I've been doing recently, which is pretty good. Another thing is just like cleaning my room when I wake up because I feel like it just if my room's messy, like my brain's messy, so I'll like wake up, clean it, and go to work, and I feel like a lot better about myself.
Okay. I think cleaning the room is a big one, to be honest, because like especially when you get your head drowned in work, it's like I look around and it adds more sensory input, and that's like a big thing.
Mhm.
It's like just the directed attention gets depleted by every little thing that you have outside of your screen, I find, and it becomes a mess in your brain as well. Mess in the real world translates into mess in your brain. At least for me as well. So that's definitely a good one. Okay,
Yeah.
so now that we've gone through quick icebreakers, let's get into your college and university experience first. So you started your career having done high school in a very small community in Saudi Arabia, and coming from a smaller community, then suddenly getting put headfirst into this fast-paced, competitive Canadian job market. It must have been quite a shift. So how did you adapt, and what helped you bridge that gap?
Okay, yeah. So definitely like the thing I that helped me adapt the most was literally just going up to people and just talking to them. I used to consider myself a pretty socially anxious person, but I decided that like when I'm in university, I have to let that go. I don't care if that like goes against how I am. I didn't care about being like cringe or like too much for some people because honestly that helps me filter out like the people for me. So I think definitely just talking to everyone. I would go to class sit next to like random people every day, talk to them, get their Instagrams, and like if we vibed in class, like I'll text, hey, let's go study together, let's do homework, and then like that formed a friend group, and I feel like having that sense of community, like kind of made me feel more at home, especially since I was already homesick enough. I didn't need any more, so I'm very grateful for the people that like helped me get through first year. Definitely the roughest, one of the rougher times like of my like school career, definitely.
So for someone just going into university for the first time and they're nervous about like making friends, what's like the best thing they can do?
Honestly, just get out of your head. Like nothing is that serious, and realize that it literally doesn't matter. Like you're the only one that thinks you're weird or like you're cringe. Just because like if you're sitting in class and and don't talk to anyone, people are like they're gonna like get used to you like not talking. They're not gonna want to approach you. But if they see you like being with other people a lot and talking, like people are gonna be more interested in getting to know you. And I think just like forget everything that like you thought of yourself in high school and like just accept that this is like you have to change if you want to like talk to people. And I feel like being shy as an adult is kind of like a big nerf, like honestly. And that like that translates to career as well, not just like within friendships and social situations.
Of course, I think like developing that base early, it kind of brought it like your circle expands exponentially after first year if you build a good foundation first year. And then those connections can kind of help you, career or not. It's a good experience to have regardless. So I think it's a
Definitely.
very good point. Yeah. So then you went on to study mechanical engineering at Waterloo, as you mentioned. And I know from talking to friends in engineering that figuring out the right path within engineering can be a very big decision, especially since a lot of schools expect students to know that right out of high school or by the end of first year. So, what made you choose mechanical engineering instead of other paths? And in your experience, did how do different fields of engineering determine the kinds of internships or entry level roles that students end up getting placed into?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I did pick mechanical engineering because one, I think it's the most broad, and two, like my dad is a mechanical engineer, and I like he told me like people in mechanical engineer can end up like working like a much like bigger range of jobs as opposed to like someone that goes into like chemical engineering or electrical. Like they're kind of more put into a little box where it's like there's a specific subset of jobs. But I'm like I know plenty of mechanical engineers that did end up specializing in stuff like management and as well as like electronics and other like sectors within mechanical that other programs are like specified for. So I think it being the most broad is like the reason why I picked it. And like in terms of internships, the reason why I actually don't think whatever like stream of engineering you pick matters is because like the internships you do is like what you're going to do after you graduate. Like that's going to determine it. The major you pick doesn't really have that much of an effect. And that's a good thing about Waterloo because you're kind of forced to do like 6 internships. So I actually know plenty of people that on their resumes, like let's say like some guys in like mechanical engineering, and he'll just get rid of the word mechanical, apply to only software roles, and that's what like he does now. So yeah, I don't think it's that big of a deal if you're in a program and you realize like, oh god, I don't want to do this forever. Like no one's forcing you, and your major doesn't define that. So yeah, there's a lot of freedom within engineering, I think, as well.
How did so I'm very curious about that whole removing the mechanical part and just putting engineering, because that's how they come in and take all of our roles as well in software.
Yeah.
So how do they how do you make that pivot, or like what are some of the ways that you can determine, if there's a different stream of engineering that you may like more? Is it extracurriculars? Is it hanging out with different people who are in different fields of engineering? What determines that?
Honestly, I think it's a mix of everything you just listed. Definitely, like a lot of influence. Like if you're surrounded by people that are all in like CS, and you see all the cool work they're doing, and you're like, wow, that actually looks like really interesting. You might have not heard about it before, but then seeing them like do cool stuff like that like could inspire you. Another thing is design team because I feel like a really unique thing about design teams as opposed to like working at an actual company is that you're like the team is like a lot smaller, but there's a bigger range of like roles in the same room. So like here at Tesla, for example, everyone around me is a mechanical engineer. So there's no like variety I'm seeing. But at my like at Waterloo, I was on a design team called UOFT. And the guy next to me was electrical, and there's people like doing propulsion. There's people doing like actual like designing PCBs. So seeing that like all around me, and like I know like all those other people like have the same experience, like seeing a whole variety of different like tasks they get to work on, and like I think like that gives people exposure to like other options out there instead of like just the major they selected. So I think just like putting yourself in like different rooms is like a big way to like find out other streams of engineering that you might want to do.
Of course. Yeah, I think, I mean, adding on to that point, the design team, that's something that I've heard is very common at not just Waterloo, but a lot of universities across Canada. Could you talk to us about kind of what are some of the most important extracurriculars in general that you did? And what would you suggest students in engineering go into for extracurriculars?
I definitely think that most important, and I have heard this from recruiters, is definitely design teams,
Mm,
and especially design teams that are adjacent in industry to like any company you want to work for. So an example would be being on the Formula SAE team and wanting to work at Tesla or any automotive company, because recruiters see that experience and they know people that have done those design teams are literally 10 steps ahead of anyone that hasn't. So I think if you're a first year, definitely go to design teams, and you don't even have to commit to anything. Just show up to the first meeting. If you like what they're talking about, just stay for a bit, do a few tasks, put them on your portfolio, just like get something on there. And I think that gets you ahead, especially if you don't like. I know first years obviously they have no internship experience, so that basically is the exact same thing as getting a whole internship. So I think like especially design teams being free, like for students, like that's such an advantage that I think every first year should take advantage of. Like when they're like starting out, like the resume and portfolio and stuff.
For sure. Yeah. And when you're in the design team, I know that there's almost like different levels within the design team, right? And you can kind of go up those levels from what I've heard from engineering friends. What are some of the best ways that you can get yourself known and go up in those ranks?
Yeah, so the biggest thing, and I have witnessed this, is like there's like let's say like 30 first years that join a design team. Half of them are not going to speak up when they're giving out tasks, and they're just going to like sit around because they don't think they're worthy of the tasks that are being offered. And the other half are literally so like they're very opportunistic. Like they'll hear like, oh, like there's this task to design like X mount. Like even if they're not the one given the task, they still go up to the person that got the task and like watch them do it, like shadow them basically. Ask if there's anything they can help with. Those people, like one, you're talking to the like upper years that are doing the stuff you want to do, and you get like hands-on experience with it. And that's like one way to get yourself known, is just to talk to like everyone around you. Another thing for getting like important tasks and like getting up in the ranks of design team, like becoming a lead even, is just doing a lot and like showing you're very committed to the team. And I would recommend this after like knowing for sure that you're going to stay, because I do know something that a lot of like first and second years are like notorious for are like joining design teams, taking on a bunch of tasks, and just like not showing up after and not doing anything, and that creates like a huge backlog. So yeah, do not be that person. Uh, yeah,
So it's a balance between, taking on enough tasks to be able to extend in those ranks, but also being aware that, you might not be able to complete all those tasks. So don't take on more, don't try to bite more than you can chew.
yeah, exactly.
So that's kind of the goal with that. But yeah,
Yeah,
okay, awesome. So that's your college and university experience done. So let's jump into career experience. And I know at Waterloo it kind of meshes between the two, but that's kind of just segmented in this way. Um,
yeah, yeah.
so at Waterloo, co-op starts very early, and in your case, you're already working at a startup called Evercloak by the second semester of your first year. How did you go from? How did you balance just getting accustomed to your new life in the Waterloo area and to immediately having to search for internships at the same time?
Yeah, honestly, for me and my parents, it was definitely like a crazy jump. Like it's usually not normal for like people like that went to my high school to start working when they're 18 years old, like a proper like internship. So like honestly, I was just going with the biggest thing that helped me was like going with the flow of things. Like you just take things as they come. I know for a fact that if I sat there, or if I told myself in 12th grade, like, yo, in 8 months from now, you will be at a company working for, like, you would be getting paid working at a company, and you're going to actually have to do stuff for that company, and you don't know anything about engineering. Like, if I told myself that, I would be so scared to come here. But knowing that, like, everything, is, like, everyone does this at Waterloo, and I know I got selected to be there for a reason, and I know I'm capable of it. So you just take it as it comes. And I think just going with the flow and like not stressing out, knowing things are out of your control, and knowing like that people don't expect that much of you as a first year is definitely what helped me the most. I definitely took advantage of the fact that like my manager knew I didn't know, obviously didn't know anything, because I just finished like 4 months of school, and half of that was like goofing around because that's what you're supposed to do in first year. Um, but yeah, like I told him like, hey, like I don't know how to use like Autodesk Inventor, and he'll just like send me a bunch of links, learned it, and I'll go up to like the senior mechanical engineer, like, hey, like can you help me design this thing? And because like I put myself out there, and like I knew that I didn't know anything, and they knew that, and they're okay with it. Like it's fine. Like just take things as they come, and like don't worry too much about not knowing stuff, because I know a lot of people have that concern, especially with their first internship. So I think like that mindset just helped me a lot.
Of course, I think definitely it starts with the mindset and less so about the knowledge itself,
Yeah,
especially in first year, because there's a lot of people who do have that nervous mindset. And because of that, they don't put themselves out there. They don't, when they get the opportunity to seek information, they just kind of crumble because they feel like they're not good enough to know that piece of information yet. And there's, I
Exactly.
guess, AI now has given us an opportunity to close that gap. In our understanding of technical things, like for example, this company, from what I've heard, they make like patented thin films to make industrial cooling more energy efficient. And coming from high school, I'd assume with just some basic physics, you're not going to know anything about how that works. So definitely, I think for sure going and just talking to people at the company, getting their insight, because there's a lot of things maybe that are exclusive to that company that you'll start to understand only when you're there. So it's completely okay to walk in without not knowing, without knowing everything. All
100%.
right. So in that role, you balanced three very different buckets of skills, and they do connect in some ways. But so you did programming with Python and Pandas, and then you did design and documentation with GD&T in Autodesk Inventor, as you mentioned, and you also did hands-on hardware work like laser cutting. If
Mhm.
you had to do a sort of start bench cut between those three categories of engineering hard skills, so programming, design, documentation, and hands-on hardware work. Which one would you start as the most useful for your first mechanical engineering internship if you had to learn it before going in, and then from there bench and cut?
Honestly, I would definitely say like anything hands-on first is
Mhm.
really important because I feel that like if you understand how things actually work in real life, going into design is much easier and more clear. Like going from that's like kind of like how I like to think of that is like learning stuff straight by just reading it on a piece of paper or actually doing like a lab where you're learning like whatever you're trying to like study. And I think like at least in my experience, I feel like studying from a textbook, I don't get the same like mental simulation and I don't remember it as well as opposed to like if I did a lab for it or a project. So that's kind of like how I like to think about how I approach like learning new things is try to get as hands on with it as possible. So definitely like any machining work you could do because like with solid modeling, you're basically machining down like a block, which is what we do in real life. And if you don't have that real life fundamental, you're gonna struggle with like design, which is what like the industry standard is for for like mechanical work. So yeah, I think that first for sure.
And then, like, where would you place programming in that sequence?
Honestly, I feel like programming is just a skill. It's kind of like you just kind of have to know it as it like I would say like you have to know how to write an email. And I don't think like now as you mentioned we have AI, like we have chat gpt. I don't think as it's as challenging to like do any programming task, and as a mechanical engineer you most likely will not be tasked with something like insanely hard, and it's definitely something that like chat can do as long as you prompt it properly and like you understand like the requirements of like whatever system you're trying to build. And I think as long as you have like chat, like every manager like approves that pretty much. If you can get the work done in time, like use AI. um, at the time like chat wasn't really a thing because this was like 2020, like early 2023. So I was just like referring to like online like resources for how do I like sort through like the csv like file, like that's literally all I had to do. But yeah, with chat like it should be fine.
Great. Yeah. And on the topic of using AI, this is a big question that I've had. So you have been in this sort of space since 2022, basically. So you've been around before AI was, I don't want to say invented, but commercialized, let's say.
Yeah.
So you've seen the internship grind before and after AI was a thing. Um, so, how do you kind of see the difference in expectation from recruiters now that there is AI versus when there wasn't in terms of mechanical engineering roles specifically?
That's a really good question. I feel like now there's a much higher expectation to be able to take on like programming tasks. And not to scare anyone, like no one's job is being lost because of this. It's literally just like there's more opportunity for mechanical engineers to take on like a control. Okay, so let me describe it in terms of like how a mechanical system is. So you're gonna have like obviously some parts that you designed, and those are physical mechanical parts that have no electronics. And then most likely you're gonna have a motor that needs to be controlled. Usually the electrical engineer will focus on that control system to control that motor for your machine that you're building. But now with AI, there's a higher expectation for mechanical engineers to be able to take on that control task. And I do know that like we do take control system class in like fourth year, but I'm talking about like first, second, third year internships where you're not expected to know that. There's a much higher expectation to be able to like take an Arduino and code something to control your motors, and to be able to make a closed loop system, like to be able to build off of it, and to make it scalable. There's definitely a higher expectation for interns to have that skill because of AI.
Okay, awesome. All right. So let's jump from your first role to your second. And I know with internships, especially at the start, you grow a lot between your first and second internship, especially. So
Mhm.
your next role was at Valbruna, which was very different from Evercloak because it's focused on steel refinement, which is a different material focus entirely. So in software, I found that you can kind of, I want to connect this back to what I know is you can ground yourself in fundamentals, like for example, having a front end, having a back end, having a database, and connecting the three together in some way. Is it similar in mechanical engineering, or does each internship kind of feel like you're just starting from scratch?
I feel like with going to different industries does feel like starting from scratch.
Hmm.
You there's always going to be like an onboarding, and yes, I know like Waterloo internships are only 4 months. I'm going to be honest, I don't think it's enough time to get fully onboarded and like integrated into whatever you're doing. I think at least 1 month of just learning about the company, learning what they do, learning about all the processes, is essential for actually understanding what you're doing at work, instead of just getting like random tasks that they need help with. Um, so yeah, I would say no, you definitely do need like to have mechanical fundamentals, like the stuff we learn in school. I think that's this type of things you should be falling back on. First principles, having that thought process that we're all taught in like that first year, like mechanical design class. That's what you should be falling back on. I think regarding like the things that you're starting from scratch on are like learning about the industry, learning about what your company is doing, learning about all the processes. And I think it's unique for every company, and I think it's very important to like learn that like within the first month of your internship. Um, and yeah, like also like being aware of like all your resources is a good thing, but I think what like managers look for is a student that's like self-sufficient, like they know like what they know, like they know all the stuff they learned in school and they can apply that. I think that's the biggest thing. If you find yourself asking questions that like you know you kind of are expected to know based on like your academic level, then that is a little bit of like a red flag for managers.
Yeah, and that's a very good point about asking. Although you should, I think, ask dumb questions. It's a good thing to do because you kind of you learn. You don't have to spend as much time worrying about details that you could, like maybe one of your colleagues already knows a certain part of the system that you're building extremely well. So if you ask that question, you'll skip a lot of time that you would have spent having to grind through that and learn it. But at the same time, the question needs to have some kind of educated basis,
Mhm.
whether that's from your own learning at school or your own research through AI tools, through any kind of research to learn whatever that is. So, do you have a good rule of thumb of where to start and where to stop spinning your wheels, trying to learn something yourself, and resort to asking someone a question?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's actually something I literally was like running into today. So, like how I gauge whether or not like I should be asking this question, or like I should like continue learning on by myself, is like one, think of how much time you're wasting just thinking about it. And if you have like the adequate resources, if it's something that's like an easy Google search, like easy like like chat GPT it, definitely do not be asking like you're the senior engineers. But if it's something like kind of team specific, a little bit more technical, or a little bit more like scientific based that you cannot mess up, definitely talk to like any of the experts on your team. um, but yeah, if it's something that could be looked up and figured out online through forums or anything, do not ask like anyone on your team.
Excellent. Yeah, I agree with that. What kinds of tools did you use in this role compared to at Evercloak? Let's kind of think about maybe some more technical tools that someone could maybe learn on their own before going in.
Okay, luckily enough, both roles use the same CAD package, which was Autodesk Inventor. I think going from SolidWorks, it's like a tiny learning curve. So already having that CAD experience with that specific software is like really like clutch. Honestly, like it sped up like a lot of the learning that the team expected me to have. But yeah, honestly, I think my role was at Valbruna was mainly like CAD stuff, and same with Evercloak. So I don't think there was a big difference in tools besides like how the team likes to communicate. And part of that's being because Valbruna is like a super old company.
Okay, so you think like learning CAD is like one of the best tools to get in at least your first role in mechanical engineering, right?
100%. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So what about tools like so I've learned a little bit from looking at your story, CFD and FEA. Could you break down what those are for people who are confused, and did you learn those mostly through coursework or did you learn them on the job?
Okay, yeah. So CFD is computational fluid dynamics, and that's basically a way to model any way that like fluids flow as they would do in real life to validate like whatever design you're working on. And FEA is finite element analysis, and that's kind of the same thing with like design validation, but more with like forces and statics. So if there's any applied loads and like taking into account like the environment you're in, and vibrations and everything, and that's basically to validate like more complex designs and assemblies. So learning the two, I definitely CFD and FEA are things that you would take in like a fourth year technical elective. It's not something that like you learn in a regular coursework. So I learned it through one like asking my manager because I actually took on those tasks like out of like me wanting to learn it. It wasn't a requirement. So I was like, hey, like, is there any FEA stuff I could help you with? And he gave me a few like simulations and like walked me through on how to set it up and everything. Another resource was LinkedIn Learning. If you have a school email, you should have access to LinkedIn Learning, and I think it's a very, very valuable resource for like learning like kind of niche skills within your industry. And that's something that a lot of people surprisingly don't know about. So definitely recommend. And yeah, that's how I learned like the two things that are not really typical to learn in school.
Excellent. Yeah, LinkedIn Learning is not something I've tried actually. So I think that's a very good new tip that I've learned as well.
Yeah,
So I will definitely take a look at that. All right. So jumping straight into Geotab. This is where we met for the first time at Geotab onboarding.
the lower.
So yeah, a little lower job for the viewers. But yeah, I mean, just from my side before we started Geotab, very big shout out to Geotab for taking us on late in the summer semester. Lovely people. Um, you know, they're working on a lot of great things as well. So if you are thinking about applying somewhere, I would highly recommend Geotab for sure. Um, so before we get into Geotab, sometimes you can do everything right. You crush the interview, you get the offer, you line up the role, and then life hits you with something unfair. Could you share what that experience was like, how you navigated it, and the way it changed your mindset about your career path? I'll kind of just give you the floor here.
I honestly love talking about this experience in my life because it shows how fast you can get something you want if you put your mind to it. So let me just give you a little bit of a backstory. Basically, I applied for a role through Waterloo Works, which is the job search portal that Waterloo has. I got the role, did the interview, went perfectly fine. I got the role, got the offer, and that was like within the first 2 months of like that term. So that means like about 2.5 months later, the CEO calls me. I'm just sitting at lunch with my dad and uncle who flew all the way from Saudi Arabia to help me settle into. I was actually going to move to Oakville because that's where the job I got was. So he moved there to help me like talk to different landlords and find a place. And like, that's not a cheap journey either, like for my dad. And so like we were all sitting at Kelsey's in Brampton. I got a call from the CEO, and then I'm like, oh, okay, like maybe he's like wanting to say hi or anything. Keep in mind, this was a week before I was supposed to start the role at that company. I answered, and he's like, hello, is this Jillanne? I'm like, yes. And he's like, hey, this is like a very serious call. Like, do you have time? And I'm like, serious? Like, what could be so serious about this? And of course, I was like very excited to be talking to a CEO of the company I was going to be working at. Like, I was very like honestly starstruck. Uh, and then he's like, so we have to rescind your offer. And I freeze in the spot. I was like, so I go outside of the restaurant, like I go in the parking lot, and I'm like, what do you mean like rescind, like what happened? And he's like, yeah, like the project no longer has enough funding, we have to get rid of all the interns that we had scheduled for the summer term. So I was like, oh, is there like any other projects you could have me work on, like anything? Is like, no, I'm sorry, there's nothing. And then I said, okay, like what if I worked for you without paid? Like I don't care about the paid, like I just need experience. Like I need this to like graduate, because there's a specific amount of internships you need to complete for graduation. And I know I'm supposed to start next week. Like my dad flew in like from like very far away to help me like get settled. Like I was about to like get a place and everything. Bought a car even for the drive, because it was going to be pretty long. Um, and he was like, yeah, there's like nothing I could do. And then he like hung up, and then after sent me like a formal rescinding email. So honestly, like that ruined my day. Like, and I'm gonna be honest, like I was very upset about it. Like one, because of how little notice I had, and like two, it's just something you never anticipate. And like another thing I like to like always like be aware of is like I already told people about like, oh, I'm gonna work at this company. And like going from like being really excited and like speaking about it, and then like having it being taken away from you is kind of like it's a little weird. Like it's just awkward and everything. So I was obviously very bummed out, and I had no hope. I was like, there's no way I'm gonna find a job. Like all the postings closed. Like what am I gonna do? And then I come back like tears in my eyes. I come back at the table with my dad and uncle, and I'm like my dad's like, Jillanne, what's wrong? I'm like, don't worry. And then I don't want to talk about it in front of my uncle either, because like we're not tight, like we're not like that close. So I was like, I don't want to cry in front of him. So my dad's like, okay, we'll get the bill, we'll go home and we'll talk. I said, okay. So we go home, like my dad takes me for a drive. He's like, tell me everything. So I say, yeah, like the CEO called me. He wants to rescind the offer because the company has like no funding. And then he's like, okay, like this happened to me so many times, like when I was your age, like don't worry, like you're gonna find something, like inshallah khair, pretty much like it's in God's hands, like don't worry about it. So I said, okay, like but it's still like, how am I going to find a job? Like I need it to graduate, or else I'm going to have to like graduate a year later, which is not something I want to do. And then he's like, listen, like I'll talk to people, like we'll find you something. So I'm like, okay. We had a lot planned that day. We were going to go to visit some friends in Vaughan and like go play golf with them the whole day. But I was like, I'm too depressed to do this. So I stay in the room on LinkedIn, messaging every single person. I think I sent like 300 messages on LinkedIn. Bought premium. I bought premium just so I could do that. And also like I told my dad to go through every single contact he's had his whole life, and like send me every email that could help me with anything. I literally got like barely any responses when I first started. And then like I just like kind of felt hopeless. I kept getting rejections, just people like ghosting me. And it was just like really tough. I was also supposed to go to a concert that next day. I didn't go. I was applying to jobs on LinkedIn, and that's when I decided to post about it. And I was inspired by Tanvir, who's the other intern that me and Omar worked with at Geotab. He made a post because he also got rescinded from the same exact company for the same exact reason. I saw his post, and that's when I reached out to him, and that's like shout out Tanvir. Like that's how we became friends. So I copied his post, made the same exact one, and because of that, a lot of people that are very kind, very generous, like reached out to me, and they actually like sent me a bunch of like good resources, and like sent me jobs, and even offered like referrals and stuff, which was insanely helpful. And I didn't once think that posting on LinkedIn would ever have like would actually do something, because I always thought that like LinkedIn was just like a place to like, oh, I got a new internship, and then everyone's like, oh, congrats, and it's like a glaze fest. But no, like you can actually like change your whole career because of it.
Yep.
So yeah, definitely LinkedIn is posting on LinkedIn like definitely helped like pivot the whole like tone of the situation. Like I wasn't depressed anymore. I was actually like hopeful. I'm like, wow, like some guy that works at Nvidia like reached out to me. Someone that worked at Apple, like how is this even possible? Like how, like why are these people so kind? So realizing that like there are people out there that are willing to help is insane, and like I did not think that at all. So someone at Geotab actually messaged me, and he works on the team that I was actually gonna end up working on. Spoiler, but basically he messaged me. He's like, hey, I just saw your post, like we used to work on the same design team. Like I like everyone on the design team, like I literally adore them, and I would love to help someone that was like in my shoes at one point. And then we hopped on a call. It turns out we actually have a very similar background. Like we both grew up in the Middle East, both moved to Canada for university. So we did bond a lot over that. And then after he's like, hey, listen, like I'm like, he actually was like a senior engineer on the team. And then he told me, he's like, hey, listen, I'm going to talk to the boss tomorrow and I'm going to make sure you get an interview. And I said, like, that would be insane. Like, thank you so much. So I end up getting the interview request, and I do the interview. I talk to the guy who reached out to me about it. I'm like, hey, like, here's like how it went. And he's like, okay, I'm gonna make sure that you get the job. And like, soon enough, like I did end up getting the job. Thanks to him. Like I don't know like what I would have done without that. And yeah, like I honestly had a great time at Geotab, and it opened me up to so many more opportunities, and I met some amazing people like Omar and Tanvir. And yeah, it's definitely something that I do not regret at all, and I'm honestly grateful for that rescind because now I know how to find a job insanely fast, like within 2 weeks, and I also know like the power of LinkedIn and power of like just speaking to people and just like talking about what's going on because there are people out there willing to help whether you believe it or not.
It's a fantastic story, and honestly, is one of the main reasons I wanted to bring you on because I know for a fact that you're not the only one who has gone through something like this. Maybe one of the few who has gone through it that close to the internship actually happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure, I think it these types of things they build character, especially with career hunting, and it's better to go through these things now than later,
Mhm.
while you still have a support system, at least to some extent with university. If you don't get a job, you can maybe do a semester. You can do some other things with the university to kind of make up for it. So it's definitely good to have that sort of safety net and that comfort that you could have some kind of backup option. But of course, it's not ideal, especially when you have to do that experiential credit for Waterloo as well. But yeah, I think the main takeaway is use whatever network you have, especially when you need it most. People are willing to help. I've experienced very similar things. A lot of times, it comes down to if you ask, you will receive. Like
Exactly.
that's kind of how it is. Of course, be gracious. Approach people in the right way. Don't spam their LinkedIn inbox, but yeah, like it's there are ways to go about that. So
Hmm.
if I may ask, what kind of advice would you give for someone in that situation? To what's the first thing they should do instead of, I guess, curl up in a ball? What's the first course of action you can take?
First course of action is definitely just like tell as many people as you can that are able to like help out. This includes people that have secured internships. Like, hey, do you think you can ask your manager if there's another opening, or like um, just like asking as many people as possible. And another thing that actually was one of my options was to like reach out to a professor and asking to work as like a undergrad research assistant, which is something you mentioned earlier. I know that is an option as well, and you are able to get credit through that. So I think just like accepting that like you may, yeah, it's not ideal to work as a researcher assistant if that's not something you want to do in the future, but like if you need a credit, like you might as well. So I think just talk to people and ask as many people as you can. That's the number one thing I like you should do in this situation.
Excellent. Yep. Great point. Um, so at Geotab, the office is in Oakville, and it's a massive floor with tons of desks, two floors, LED screens covering the walls, company performance metrics, a lot going on compared to your first two internships. And so, how did it feel moving from working in startups to your first corporate environment? What are some of the similarities and differences?
Okay, wow. Yeah, definitely coming to Geotab, the second I walked into the Oakville office, I was like, what? Like, wait. The first thing is like, okay, one, we got free buffet every single day, which was like, that's unheard of. Genuinely unheard of. And I'm like, I still tell people Geotab's genuinely like the best place, best like work life experience like I've ever had ever. Uh so yeah, that's like a crazy difference is like the company actually cares about you. Wow. Another thing was how like modern the company felt. Like, yeah, working at Valbruna, like even though it was like a corporate environment, it was a steel foundry that has been around for over 100 years and has been taken over by like five different like organizations. So it was like basically ancient. working at Evercloak, which is a startup, like you're in a room with a bunch of other companies. So there was no actual like sense of like, oh, like this is like where I work. Like it's just a building where people happen to like be working on separate things. So being in a big office with like everybody working for the same company felt like, wow, like it was just like it felt like a step up, like even mentally, like wow, like I'm in this room, like this room feels like too prestigious for me, but I'm in it for a reason. And like that kind of built my confidence within myself, like wow, like I actually deserve to be somewhere like this nice.
Excellent. Yeah. The a common theme that you're talking about is the whole imposter syndrome and how to overcome that. So what are some ways that you've been able to overcome it? Is it learning things fast? Is there another way to build that confidence?
There's okay, that's also a really good question because I feel like imposter syndrome is something like even to this day, like I still struggle with occasionally. The biggest thing that kind of grounds me is like talking to the people that like I look up to and knowing how similar we are, and like I'm like wow, like yes, this person is insanely cracked, but like we have a similar background. Like there's no like fundamental difference between us that makes this person so much better than me. Like we're in the same room, we work for the same company. Like why do I think this person is like so much better than me in the sense that like I can't, like they're too good for me. Like that's what I'm trying to say. But like you talk to them, like you could be friends with them, you could go hang out. Like that's like it's basically like that's like you in the future. And I do agree with like the notion where people say you are the five people you surround yourself with. Knowing that you're in that room surrounded by these successful people that you look up to and you feel like, oh, I don't belong here, like look at it the other way. Like you were in that room, why are you there? Like because you belong. And I think like always remembering that like definitely helps me overcome my imposter syndrome, like, and it kind of grounds myself and realize like okay, I'm here because I deserve to be here, not because I got lucky or because I go to like this school or whatever.
Excellent. Yep. Great point. Um, what surprised you about the role or even about yourself when you made the step to Geotab?
Okay, so an interesting thing about my role at Geotab is that it had nothing to do with my program. I technically was like a system verification intern, which I still don't know what that means. They don't know what it means. They're like, bro, like you're just there to like do stuff, like log in some, like they made these like little like tracking devices in cars, and I would like take the data from that device, put it into Excel, and just like log it. That's literally my main task, and it took me maybe like 2 hours a day. So the rest of the time, I was like, okay, like, what do I do now? I literally talked to my boss and I was like, hey, like, can you give me something mechanical or like even electrical, like to work on? And he gave me like some tasks like, oh, you can design a fixture for this thing. Go talk to these people. And I think like that's like to answer your question, like what I learned about myself is that like I'm in control of what I'm doing at work. I feel like even full-time engineers struggle with like knowing this, that you can go to your manager and say, hey, I don't like what I'm doing, like can you give me something else, or anything like that. And like most of the time, like there's no reason why like they wouldn't consider putting you on a different project. So yeah, like knowing that like I'm at work and I'm also doing it for me, not to help the company only. Like as an intern, I'm here for myself, like to be honest. So yeah, like knowing that about myself, like helped me a lot, and also helped me like build like workplace confidence. Like I know better like people to reach out to for certain things instead of like only referring to my manager or like stuff like that, like just feeling more like an actual employee rather than like someone's intern.
Yeah, great point. And I think for me at least, it's you kind of feel embarrassed to ask about these types of things to managers, but they are aware that you are there for a limited amount of time and you want to extract as much as possible in that limited amount of time. So even if you have that thought, reach out to them. And if for whatever reason they don't give you something to do, you are make use of that time, because if you start to build smaller, why not just build a small project using their tech stack? If they don't maybe they don't trust you to do something big with their tech stack, or with one of their systems, do a small project, show your manager, show your colleague, show someone what you did. And this sense of confidence will build in them as well if you have that sense of confidence. And that's how I've found myself getting into different getting put onto different projects as well, where I initially was not given the confidence or given the trust to be able to work on this type of project. So I think, yeah, that's definitely a really good point. Um,
Hmm.
so the internship program at Geotab, treated us very well, as we alluded to before. Could you describe how you got involved as an intern and what steps did you take to grow your network at the company?
Okay, so number one thing I want to bring up is that like there was we were lucky enough that like Geotab was very involved with their interns. That like there was like little events that they'd have. We had an intern group chat with like the recruiter. We also they had like a like I think every term like they had a little hackathon for the interns to like participate in and like take their mind off of like whatever work they're doing. And I feel like that number one, like meeting people. I think around that time is like when Omar Tanvir and I like all like started meeting like the other interns, and like we actually had like quite a bit of fun like going out to dinner and stuff.
I think, yeah, the hackathon definitely pushed us to push each other over those 2 weeks. And yeah, I think just getting involved in anything the company has to offer, a lot of companies here in Canada are adapting to this internship um, bubble, you could call it. They're creating more experiences. They're allowing students to take ownership of these programs and invite other students to do certain things. And it really builds, especially depending on the company. A lot of companies might have a very small cohort of interns, especially companies that you might start your first internship at. So definitely go out and get to know everyone in that cohort, because you never know where they'll end up going, and the types of experiences or chats you could have down the line. Hence, we're speaking right here a year and a half later, completely different perspectives, completely new experiences for each of us. So I think, yeah, that's a really good point as well.
Yeah.
So on the topic of the hackathons, what type of value as a mechanical engineer do you get from doing a hackathon, or is there an equivalent for engineering?
Yeah, so honestly, being at Geotab, like everyone there was kind of there for some sort of software like or electrical role, and there wasn't really a place for like mechanical interns, like especially like within this hackathon, because it was more like you could either present like a concept of like your idea, or you could actually like make something, which was primarily like coding. In our case, it was like a computer vision system. So I do think that like this specific hackathon wasn't like very like yes, I learned a lot, and yes, it was a very good experience, but I don't think I had much like technical like role in that hackathon, because it was like primarily for software students. However, I think like there's no harm in doing it. Like yeah, I learned a lot still, like even though I didn't have like much technical contribution to the team. But when it comes to like hackathons in general for mechanical engineers, honestly, there aren't many, but I do know like at Waterloo, and I hope other schools have this too, where it's like Toyota would like come in and like have like a little like robotics challenge, and I think they have this like every fall term, and there's like prizes, and it's the exact same thing as a hackathon, except like you're actually building physical systems, and you're given like all the resources you need. I'm sure that, like there also were like 3D printers and stuff on site that you could use. I think doing something like that is helpful, and it helps you get something quick on your resume, or your like portfolio or something. But I do think there is definitely space for more mechanical focused hackathons.
Fantastic. Okay. So that's enough Geotab discussion for now.
Yeah.
So let's dive straight into Tesla. So with how hard you manifested it, and I was there to see it, your next step was almost like written in the stars. You joined Tesla in January of this year as a cell equipment R&D engineer. And for a lot of engineering students, including yourself, Tesla is a dream company for a lot of people. And I remember you updating me as your resume, as your sort of interview process was unfolding.
Yeah.
But for the audience, could you walk us through about like how did you approach applying to Tesla specifically, and what was the interview process like? How did you turn that dream into a reality?
Okay, this is something again, like I love talking about this because, as Omar said, I literally was relentless. I did not let anything stop me from getting this internship. So the number one thing I changed my approach in is like actually like looking at what Tesla wants. So what I did is I went on LinkedIn, found people in roles that I want to join, and like looking at their profiles, their experience, and like if they posted their resume or portfolio, I would look at it and be like, okay, like I need to step up. I need to like like do another project to put on my portfolio so I could score this internship. So another thing I did was like again reaching out to those people that are in places I want to be, and that being Tesla, being like, hey, like, do you mind helping me out with my resume? And this goes back to like reaching out to people when I got rescinded. I messaged the same people again, so we already had that rapport. So I wasn't like, it wasn't weird for me to like message this person like, hey, do you want to look at my resume? Because I honestly think if I just got a random message right now from someone I have never heard of before, do you want to look at my resume? I will probably not open that message. But because we already spoke a bunch before, it was normal. So yeah, like people that have worked at Tesla before were like helping me out, like, hey, like fix this point, like, or focus more on this skill or experience. Having it gone through like many revisions, like by people in places where I want to be, definitely was a different approach I took this time, especially after knowing how bad that Geotab, or sorry, that, I don't want to say the company's name, but the company that rescinded me's, like that whole situation. I definitely like wanted to like avoid that situation at all costs. Um, but yeah, having all those revisions done, and also like creating a portfolio. Something I did differently this time was also make a website for my portfolio. I just went on Google Sites, created like a little, like, is something I did within like 2 hours. It's extremely easy, and I recommend that everyone does this. Go on Google Sites, create a website, buy a domain for like $10 a year, and use that. And I think ever since I made that website, I have like my interview like rate has increased exponentially. Genuinely, like every single time, like way more interviews than I've ever seen in my life. So um yeah, that's definitely something different I did. And with specifically applying to Tesla, I applied to every role that I thought I was actually interested in, and I just sat and wait for interviews. And based on like the type of interviews I was getting, that kind of showed me like, okay, this is where they see me. Like, oh, they see me like as someone that's good with like materials or something, like I or like analysis, and that's not really something I want to do. So I changed my resume, made it more like mech design focused, and then I started getting the interviews I actually wanted.
Fantastic. Yeah. Was there a referral involved?
With Tesla, I didn't have a referral, but with other companies, I did get referrals. And something I do want to notice, I want to note, is that referrals didn't really help with like whether I get the interview or not. I think like it may just increase the chance that someone actually looks at your resume, but that doesn't guarantee anything.
Mhm.
And I like even heard this from like my previous manager, because I referred a bunch of my friends. He told me himself like, I'm just gonna look at them, but if unless like the resume is actually like a good fit for the team, there's like they won't get an interview.
Great. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I do want to go back to what you said about um, portfolios, because that was actually a question I wanted to ask you, because I did see the portfolio. How do you position that portfolio? Because obviously, depending on the role, you're able to tailor your resume, but you're obviously not going to be able to tailor your portfolio to every single role, right?
Mhm.
Because different recruiters from different roles, as you're applying during the application season, will see the same thing. Um, how do you make your portfolio general enough, but also specific to be able to get different roles that you're applying for?
Yeah, that's again a really good question. So one thing that I actually like doing is, okay, on my portfolio, there's a bunch of different like subsets of like things I could do as a mechanical engineer on the job, and I make sure that like there's like four things. I make sure that all of these four things are stuff I am willing to do like full time, like as a full time role, and it's nothing that I wouldn't want to do. So as I mentioned before, like I got a bunch of like analysis, which is like again like FEA, CFD stuff. I personally don't want to do that as my full time job, because you're just sitting there like on a computer running simulations. And I also got like some materials interviews, which again is not something I was super interested in. So take all of those off your portfolio if it's not something you want to do in your job. And I only recommend doing this if you have enough experience to be able to be selective and picky. If you're a first year, do not remove like just keep as much experience as you can until you build that for yourself. And then like every time I'm applying to a new job, I'll just reorder the four like projects I have in terms of like how relevant it is to the role or the company. And I just think, because I know hiring managers don't look at your resume for that long. So if the first thing they see is something that's like a very good fit to like whatever role you're applying for, you're more likely to get an interview. So I think just having things I like to do, reordering them on my resume portfolio, and then sending it out. That's the only tailoring I would recommend for like applying.
Wow. Okay. So for applying for resume standards, the only thing that you sort of change between them is your order.
The
Is
order of the
that
skills section, yeah, that's like
the
what
order of the
I,
skills section exclusively,
yeah.
not work experience, not projects. There you keep all that the same in terms of content.
For resume content, I think like I keep like the actual like work experience in like reverse chronological order because that makes the most
Right.
sense. The skill section doesn't matter what order it's in, and so that's why I reorder it in terms of relevance. In projects, which I don't have a project section on my resume, I just have a portfolio separately that I attach. I just reordered those ones in terms of how relevant they are.
Excellent. Okay, so you don't actually change the content of anything on your resume. It's just the order of the skills, and that's it for in terms of
Yeah,
tailoring.
rarely do I change any like text.
Wow. Okay. Excellent. Okay. So let's talk about Tesla specifically. Now you're on the job. The environment at Tesla is often considered quite controversial in terms of its ruthlessness and speed of development, which is a good and bad thing, of course. What's your perspective on that now that you're there?
Okay, one thing about Tesla is that you definitely need to have like an insane work ethic and like will to like actually do your job properly and like fast. Because at Tesla, they're not afraid of firing interns. I've heard many stories, horror stories of like interns like not working fast enough or not working well enough and getting fired like a month in. So yes, it is extremely fast paced, and you need to prepare for that. And again, this is team dependent. So like there are some teams that are very laid back, like the one I currently am on. I would consider much more laid back than the one I was on last internship. So yeah, my take is that like you actually have to do your job like properly, and this goes back into like knowing how to like manage yourself on the job, like knowing who to talk to, knowing your resources, and don't ask too many stupid questions. Like, like if you can Google it. Don't ask your manager because that's like another like red flag that they'll see. And that's again why I brought up the red flags earlier in this podcast episode, is because I have heard of interns getting fired for some of the things I've listed earlier.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a there is like sort of that idea of being aware that that can happen, but at the same time, I think there are ways that you can sort of look at your performance and evaluate it from an objective standpoint. Is that something you do periodically? Do you do that on your own? Do you reach out to colleagues and ask them, like, "Hey, can you be honest with me? How am I actually doing?" What are some of the ways that you go about doing that?
Yeah, this is again. I really like this question because I learned about doing this like these like check-ins within myself and with my manager. Like last internship, I used to not do this. Yeah, so I noticed in the beginning of my last Tesla internship, my first task was moving a little slow because it was a lot to get used to, and I kind of was thrown into the deep end with the task, and I was aware of that. And again, like I have to admit, I was pretty anxious about like not performing to my boss's expectations. So I set up a meeting with him. I'm like, hey, like, and he literally titled it performance check-in because I told him like, hey, I want to talk about how I'm doing, like any advice or any guidance you can provide. He was like, yeah, like I think you're doing great, but I do agree that like you could have done this a bit faster, and like I'm wondering if it's because like you're getting used to the company or if it's because like you have like an actual like a learning curve that we should like go back and like revisit, and I could like teach you some like fundamentals so that you can do your work like faster in your next task. And this happened like I think the first month, like it was after the first month of my internship. um and after this like chat with him, like I started like having these chats with him weekly. Like I scheduled them myself because I was like, that was really good feedback I got from him and like really good advice and guidance. And I feel like because of that one conversation, like I was much more self-aware, and like I saw the bigger picture of like where I stand in this internship, and I was like, I really want to prove myself, um, to him and to myself as well, of course. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna schedule these weekly and talk to him about how I did and like what I plan on doing next and everything. And being the one to take initiative of that was something he highlighted in my like end of term review. He was like, yeah, like that's something that like Tesla managers have to do, is like give the interns a rating and a review and a like a comment and everything. And that was something that was highlighted, was like that initiative to like get feedback. And I think doing that early on in the internship is extremely important for like self growth even.
Fantastic. Yeah. I know definitely I'm also scared of doing that sometimes, but it's also like you can be honest with yourself, but there's a lot of things that you might be tunnel visioned on after a certain amount of time at work, and you might not be seeing the full picture on your own. So I think definitely with return offer as well, which we'll kind of talk about now, that is a useful thing to do to be able uh, to have that written on your end of term report that you are someone who seeks feedback, and that's an important skill no matter what role you're going into, right? um
100%. You know.
so yeah, so now, spoiler before, you're interning again as a mechanical design engineer. How does your current role differ from your previous role, and what soft skills allowed you to bridge the knowledge gap between your first and second time at Tesla?
Yeah, so things like technical differences were number one. On my previous job, it was like a very like early stage prototyping role. Like it was an R&D role, so everything was done very like, for lack of a better word, like it was more sloppy than like having something like being part of something that's already going to be integrated like very soon. So being like very early on in the design cycle was in my first internship was like something I honestly liked because there was a lot of room for like making mistakes and a lot of room for like trial and error and like coming up with your own ideas and a lot more room for creativity. But the role I'm in currently, since it's a design role, we're designing things. Sorry, like I'm going to be more specific for my team. Like I'm on the interiors mechanical design team, specifically working on like lighting, switches, and sensors. So I'm basing all my designs off of stuff people have already done in the past because it's a standard at the company. So having less room for creativity was a little bit of a difference for me to get used to. However, there's always opportunity to like work on some prototyping and R&D stuff as well on this team. So I think you get best of both worlds being like later in the design cycle. So I do prefer like the work I'm doing right now. And regarding soft skills, the stuff that helped me like bridge the gap between being very early on in the design cycle versus much later is like, again, all the things I learned from my first internship is like getting quick feedback. Don't struggle for too long if I'm stuck on anything. Like for example, like right now I'm working with CATIA V6, which is a known industry standard CAD software for mostly automotive, and it's not something that like every company has, and it's also something that's very hard to learn on your own because there's no resources for it online. That is only because there's no student license for it, so there's no tutorials or anything. So I literally every single day I meet with my mentor, who's like he's a senior mechanical engineer, and we have like a like CAD working session where he's like walking me through the different features of CATIA and like how to surface model versus solid model. So not being afraid to talk to people, one soft skill, another one resourcefulness, and also like having a really good self-awareness on like where you stand and like how quick you should be moving, um, as opposed to how fast you actually are moving. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting what you said about the stage of the design cycle determines how much creativity you have over what you're building. And I would think at Tesla that going into it, it would probably be a startup environment within a corporate environment with how fast they're sort of moving. Um, so I think it's a good point that you mentioned that you need to be aware it's not just the company you're working at, but the team you're working at determines these finer details. So it's a very good possibility that you could get into a certain team and either enjoy it or not enjoy it just based on the team itself and not the actual company, right? So
Exactly.
for those who are afraid of applying to these types of um, hyper competitive environments, there's always there's different teams, and you shouldn't be afraid to just put your foot in the door and just apply, um, because it really does determine, your team determines everything. um, okay, so I guess last question about Tesla. What does a day-to-day look like at Tesla? Give us a little day in the life, and how have your project scopes grown the longer you've stayed at the company?
Okay, yeah, this is again a really good question. So day in the life of my current role, I have the option to work at home or in the office, and I prefer the office because more resources. I can talk to the people around me, and I also like feel like it helps me like focus and get out of like my room and stuff. So yeah, I'll come into the office, go get coffee, just drink it, and then I'll just like write a to do list for the day. I look at the to do list from the day prior, and I'll see like, okay, I didn't finish this, or I should like revisit this thing, and then I'd remake the one for that for today. Then I'll go take a break, go chill like for 5 minutes. I'll literally just like walk around the like sometimes I go walk to the parking lot if I'm feeling sleepy, or I'll like just like walk around the building. This is literally just to wake me up, and I'll come back and like I'll focus for a bit until lunch, and then like I'll either go sit with friends, or if I'm like if I was like I feel like I didn't do enough work in the morning, I'll just like stay for a little bit longer and work. And then I'll like go reward myself every time I do like a task. Like I'll be like, okay, I'm just gonna go to the vending machine and get like a protein bar or something, or like go back and chill, anything like that. And then I'll just like keep working like same like just like go through my to do list and everything. Talk to people if I ever get stuck with anything. Like again, I don't like to struggle for more than an hour on anything, so I'll go talk to like someone that sits next to me. Like, hey, do you mind helping me with this? Like taking advantage of the people around me for sure, and yeah, like I'll so, like half the time like I'm just like looking up like in the beginning of the internship I'm like going through all of like the SharePoint Confluence pages, like learning about like what my team does and like stuff they have done in the past, so that I can set a standard for my work and making sure that like whatever I'm doing is like up to their standard, if not better. And just like polishing the stuff I do like throughout the day. And then I'll just like stay as long. Like sometimes I say like 6:37. Sometimes I'll leave at like 5. So it doesn't matter. I just kind of work as much as I feel like I should be that day, and then I'll call it, and then don't think about work all night, and then wake up in the morning and repeat it.
Great. I know a lot of people are asking about day in the life of Tesla, so that's for you guys who are wondering that. And I lied. I think one more thing that people want to know, like, what's one piece of advice that you would give to someone applying to Tesla? I know you said design team is one thing, but what is the best way to get into Tesla?
This is a hard thing to answer because there's a lot of roles, and I think Tesla is one of those companies that have the most applications out every intern cycle. So I think since there's so many applications that you could like apply to, don't like just do the ones that like you know you're gonna like be a good fit for, because like let's be honest, like if you're gonna apply to something that a million people are applying to that have those skills, like you're not gonna get the interview. So just applying to the things you're qualified for is like something important, and polishing your resume for those specific ones instead of just like spam applying to all the roles on the company's website. um and I think like a lot of people, like I don't want to like scare anyone, but like mostly like second third year like you start getting like interviews from Tesla and like stuff like that. So if you're not there yet, like don't worry at all. Like people, like I know people that have like worked at like they haven't like really grinded the resumes that much, so they don't get those types of interviews. But I think like if you put a bit of effort into it, like you're very likely to get something like that. I think most of the advice would actually go into like doing the interview, because I think getting the interview is like one thing, but actually doing it well and getting the job is the harder part, I think.
Excellent. Okay, so we've gone through all of your career experience. Wonderful
Yeah.
career so far, and a long way to go as well. But you've definitely set yourself up with a great foundation, and I think a lot of people would be looking to you after this podcast as a mentor or a model of what type of way how to approach going into mechanical engineering. So let's just talk about some general questions now about getting roles in general. What do you think is the best question you've ever asked? Can be related to getting roles, can be during in a job, anything like that. And what is the best question you have ever been asked, maybe by a student, or something else who's looking to get roles?
I think a good question is one that is like again something that you can't that's not like available online, and something specific to like the person you're asking. Maybe something relating to like how they've done it, or like their experience, or something they've worked on in the past. I think those questions are actually like insightful. Asking genuine advice like to that person for a specific reason is like how I gauge what a good question is.
Yeah. So you would say, like, asking a good question can sometimes, you need to have some sort of background to ask that question, right? I think
Hmm.
that's something that a lot of people don't consider when they're asking questions to people about people who are in roles that they're trying to get into. At the end of the day, there is some element of value exchange. So if you do have experience in the thing that they're good at, and you read about, and of course reading about, if you don't have experience, read about what their experience is and ask them, or maybe like research a little bit about their experience, ask them a question about their experience, and even better if you can tack on that perhaps project that you did related to something that they worked on, could entice them to, oh, hey, he actually read my profile, he knows what I'm interested in, let's have a chat about this, and at the end of the chat we'll go into the role as well. So that sort of value exchange, I think, is important as well.
I
um,
agree.
Amazing. uh, okay, so with AI taking over a lot of technical skills, I think strong communication is what sets candidates apart in engineering and technical fields in general. As someone who is a good communicator, what tips do you have for effectively translating what's going on in your head in simple terms? And do you have any stories about a time maybe when your communication left a strong impression on a manager?
Yeah, okay, this is again something I learned like pretty early on in my career is like the value of communication, especially on the job. So something I think that would like make you a good communicator is every time you like communicate something, make sure that it's like with basis and with like proper intent. Like don't just like tell your manager like, yo, I'm doing this, I'm doing like every single time you do something. I think like the best way is to like be mindful of like their time, and like they're not going to have all the time in the world to read your like messages. So I think like at the end of every day or something, like kind of like summarize like, hey, this is what I got done today, this is what I plan on doing tomorrow, like any feedback, any advice. I think like being like proactive as well in that sense is very important, instead of just like mindlessly like messaging. And I think this also depends on like the personality of your manager. Like don't take this like fully, like take it with a grain of salt. If you and your manager are like very like friendly, or like it seems like more informal, like definitely like talk as you do your friends. But if you're with an older manager, like in my experience, I think having it very laid out and concise and like professional is something that stands out. And that like again answers the second question. Something that stood out to my manager in my second internship at Valbruna is actually like my manager and mentor were both like out for like a few weeks. Actually, like they were doing something like a business trip, and I had to take care of like all the suppliers that were coming into our office and like helping us. So like there was a project where someone had to come 3D scan a bunch of parts for me. And since my manager is usually the one that like onboards them and like takes them from like wherever they are to the office and like take them to the plant, my manager wasn't there to do that, so obviously I had to do it. And what I did is like I did everything as my manager would himself, without any like need for like help from someone more senior than me. And I just acted like I was like the full-time engineer there, and I was like, yeah, like come here, this is like what you have to do and like whatever. And at the end of every interaction with the suppliers, I would like send like a proper email like summarizing everything to my manager. And he told me when he came back that he like felt very at ease knowing that I like handled the situation like well, knowing that like it was a last minute trip he had to go on, and he felt bad for like leaving a 19 or 18-year-old like just like leaving me there, um like alone with some like random suppliers that I don't even like know. Like so yeah, I think that's definitely like to answer your question, like that's what it is.
Great. Yeah, I think these types of moments are where you get that sense of confidence from your manager, and these moments are the ones that determine things like return offers and things like that. When the manager is has to do something that he's not available for, and he puts that trust in you to execute on that, and you're able to come in with that communication and things and these soft skills to be able to bridge the gap, to get that done for him, is a really good way to go about return offers as well. So I think
Mhm.
that's a fantastic point. So last question, before the question I like to ask everyone, but we'll get to that right after. Technical question. Engineering projects can be pretty daunting, since unlike software, they can involve significant costs for machinery. And you mentioned about the when Honda and these other companies might come to campus and do these mini little hackathons and stuff, hackathons for mechanical engineers, they supply this type of equipment. But when you're doing it yourself, things like machinery and raw materials, and if something fails, it can be very expensive to redo. What's your mindset like when you're starting a new hardware project? And how do you plan it from a scientific standpoint to minimize waste, and ensure a working product is actually produced by the end and not just a bunch of failed iterations?
Okay, well, this feels like an interview question, but
And it is, I guess, yeah, because I think
yeah.
these are the types of things that people go on in their head, like, oh, like how do I get started with this project because I'm worried it's gonna fail and then I'm not gonna have anything left with it. It's like I designed all this for what because I don't have any materials left.
So the number one thing with engineering projects in general, if you're about to design something, you do not go into it with like the actual materials that the end result will be in right away. That's how you lose money. That's how you waste materials. So number one is take advantage of like like things that you can just find basically for free. Like get pieces of cardboard and glue them together. See like kind of like visualize the design or like idea. And this is like where the prototyping phase like comes into in the design process. And this is what I was talking about, like my first role at Tesla versus my second. Imagine I'm at my second role 3D printing stuff. Like, no, that doesn't work. But imagine I'm at my first role CNC machining stuff. That again doesn't work. So with prototyping, you like one 3D printing is like an insane resource that has like it's now very accessible. So if you're able to like sketch something out on paper, know that that design you know that design's feasible if you can like translate that into CAD, and that's where you're gonna start seeing like gaps in like okay like this fit doesn't work, like how am I going to fix that, and that's where you start looking into the scientific part which you mentioned, and you can go back to there's this book that a lot of mechanical engineers use. It's called Shigley's. Well, that's what we call it in industry. I don't know what the actual title is, but just look up Shigley's, you'll find it. And it has literally everything from mechanical design, like what type of fits you need, what type of screw you need for what application, what type of manufacturing process is best for what you're doing, how to size components if you're doing like any like motor sizing, power supply sizing, like anything like that. It's in that book. Definitely a good reference. Um, yeah, so to not waste like all the materials you're doing, like just check if it's feasible with CAD. And then to validate that design, there's a bunch of different things you can do. Number one, again, like I said before, 3D print it if possible. Another validation thing that's more scientific is doing a simulation if it's a bigger assembly or a more critical component that's going to be under very specific conditions, such as like if it's somewhere with a lot of wind or a lot of vibration, a lot of like dynamic loading, then you would do like an FEA simulation or a CFD. And this is more for like design validation, making sure that like I know a big problem is that like things can unscrew if you're not using the right screws because of vibrations. So you would know to get like a dampening fastener. Like those little things are part of the design process that are done very early on and validated before you purchase any parts. And that's one way, that's one advantage of like using like your computer like to CAD stuff and like prototype online before purchasing things. And it's really different doing personal projects versus like at a company because of course companies have much higher budgets. So I'm not too worried about like, oh, like I overspent like $500. Like that's not an issue at all to the company. But if you're doing a personal project, I think it is very difficult to design things because like let's say like it's I really want to make this thing out of steel, but I get a quote from like a CNC company like it's going to take $1,000 to make your part. Like who's going to pay that like out of their pocket realistically? So um yeah, again, like you can do these things through design teams because I know they're funded by the schools, and that's where the funding comes from. So if you're able to like work on like these types of projects through the design team, that increases the amount of resources you have to build whatever you're trying to make. So yeah, that's definitely a struggle I've run into, and like when it comes to like resources and everything, and I think taking advantage of like if you're at a company that allows you to work on personal stuff or your design team.
Amazing. Yeah, it's clear that there's so many ways around it, and that's why I when I'm looking at you from a software perspective, I'm like, oh, like I could just go build pretty much anything right now, and a lot of things. My limit is like hosting maybe or credits or something like for OpenAI. Like if I want to use a OpenAI or any other API, it's just API credits or anything like that. But for you guys, I look at it, it's like, oh, like how do you actually create something with a lack of resources? So it's clear that step one, if you are um, if you are working on something yourself, build the POC, build the proof of concept on your machine digitally, and ensure that when it does come to life, that you have taken into account a lot of those factors about the risks of certain things and the finer details before you start buying things. And then, as well as that, the other ways to mitigate: reach out to these design teams, funding that they have available. And then if you're at the company as well, of course, don't waste their money, but be aware that you can fail faster and move forward. So I think these are some awesome points, and I just want to close this out with asking if you have one piece of advice for someone just getting into engineering, what would it be in 10 seconds or less?
Okay, one piece of advice in less than 10 seconds is do not be afraid to talk to people around you, people you look up to, and know that they are once in your shoes, and people are more likely willing to help than you think.
I like that. Awesome. Very succinct. Amazing. Thanks so much, Jillanne, for this episode, and you'll definitely be back.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it. Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.